So the question I was asked to address was, should New Zealand adopt the sole parent benefit policies of other countries? And I thought it's a huge topic, really. You could answer it with a book. But briefly, first you'd need to know what those other policies are. Secondly, you'd need to know, are they successful policies? Are they doing what they're supposed to do? And thirdly, do those other countries have similar population makeups to New Zealand? That seems to me very important. For instance, it would be a little bit redundant to compare New Zealand to perhaps Italy or Spain, where they're still quite heavily influenced by Roman Catholicism, even if not directly, and they've never had high numbers of single parents like New Zealand has. Generally, the English-speaking countries that do tend to influence New Zealand are the UK, Australia, and to a lesser degree perhaps the US. But given our substantial ethnic minorities, Maori being the largest and also the most overrepresented on the DPB, it might be that the US is actually the most appropriate comparator for us to look at when we're looking at sole parent benefit policies, because they have the minority groups that are similarly disadvantaged, and they have a relatively short history of European colonisation. The other commonality that New Zealand and the US share is they share in the two highest teenage birth rates in the OECD, which I hope was going to come up. Nope. There we go. So you can see there the two countries at the top end. Interestingly, the Swedish countries down here at the low end, but I'll come back to that. So why is it significant? Well, at any given time in New Zealand, only around 2 or 3% of those people on the DPB are actually teenagers. However, most of them stay on welfare for quite a long time. So subsequently, the present population is heavily made up of people who began on welfare as teenagers. Interestingly, the most common benefit for a sole parent to start on is the unemployment benefit. Now, I don't know if any of you attended a session yesterday which wasn't actually advertised, but a lady from the Ministry of Social Development talked specifically about teenage parents and told us that at least a third of those current sole parents on benefit began there as teenagers. Now, that's at least. They only can give a minimum figure because they don't have benefit histories, full benefit histories, before 1996. My own estimates are that conservatively a half, and it could go as high as 60 or 70% of current sole parents began on welfare as teenagers. So that's why it's very relevant to the discussion that we're having here. Of course, in saying that too, that does leave a large percentage of recipients who didn't begin as teenagers. However, this group is more likely to have come onto the DPB after the breakup of a long-term relationship, have greater work skills, greater educational qualifications, and older children. I am, of course, generalising there, but that's the tendency. So this is a group that's easier to help back into work, and one might argue that, therefore, this is the group we should concentrate on. However, I would urge you to focus on the other group, because one of the stated aims of this whole exercise is to reduce welfare dependency, and the dependency is stemming, a great deal of the dependency is stemming from the young people coming in very early. And I'll highlight that with, sorry about this. Now, this is some of the Ministry's own research, and it tells us that the children of caregivers aged under 20 have the lowest probability of leaving a benefit. And analysis of factors associated with long benefit durations highlights having first contact with the benefit system at birth. So these people coming onto a benefit with no partner, if there had been a relationship, it's already dissolved at the time of the child's birth. and first appearing with a primary beneficiary who was female, Maori or aged under 20. So, in terms of which countries have attempted to tackle this particular pathway into adversity, it's the US that stands out. And that's not surprising because they have a very high teenage birth rate. Now, remembering then that one of the main factors for long benefit duration was being young, was coming into the benefit system with a young female Maori parent. If we have a look at, can't get the hang of this, sorry, have a look at this. These are the teenage birth rates. Now, you'll see at the bottom one is New Zealand, so it's fairly flat. The red one is the US, coming down, and it's been coming down right through the 90s, a little bit of a blip. The latest statistics say it's continuing to come down. Now, I've pulled out the minority groups there. The minority group from the US is the black teenage birth rate, which is the dark blue line. I could have put the Hispanic teenage birth rate up there, but it's very similar and they would just probably confuse each other. And then the Maori teenage birth rate is in there, and you can see that it did drop and it's gone back up, and probably for the first time it's actually higher than the black teenage birth rate. But you can see the impact that the minority teenage birth rates are having on the overall teenage birth rates. And just reiterating again, that's what's driving the dependency.